Good morning. Good morning. It is a joy to be here. As was said, I'm currently serving as the president of our Diocesan Catholic High School. There is gift and beauty in obedience when you are ordained, because I was minding my own business as the pastor of a lovely parish in the suburbs of Tulsa when I got this from the bishop. And I was told I've been named the new president of our Catholic high school, and it would begin at Christmas. So I'm almost at my one-year anniversary, and I would have the privilege of continuing on as the pastor of the parish and being the president of the school with 950 kids. And so that happened for the rest of the year, and in July, I said farewell to the people of St. Anne's and Broken Arrow and have become full-time in high school ministry. Something I never, ever would have thought would happen to me as a priest. But it has been unexpected joy being with those young people and oftentimes looking around in the hallways and realizing the responsibility that has been handed on to us to educate and to form and to inspire this young generation of Catholics to love the faith. In addition to being the president of the high school, I still have the opportunity to travel and work with Catholic Stewardship consultants. I've been with them since I became a priest in 2007. Early on in my priesthood, I had the opportunity to go to the Monsignor McGreed conference in Wichita, and I can say it truly changed my approach in the way I looked at ministry and understood the spirituality of stewardship. I was one of those individuals, when I heard stewardship, I thought of money immediately, and that conference really reset my understanding of what it is, and that it truly is a response of a disciple. And so I've been working with them since 2007, having them come into my parishes and work with us and facilitating this as a way of life, but also have the opportunity to work with them speaking as well as conducting some of their retreats. Something else that I enjoy doing part-time is I work with Catholic Leadership Institute, which facilitates leadership training and consultation in the life of the church, and so I get to do a little bit of work with them as well. And so my life is not boring. I say it's like kind of like looking through a kaleidoscope. It's diverse, but with that comes, again, just the gift and beauty of being able to experience the universal church, or the U.S. church in a particular way. I want to share with you, I think, in my mind, this happened to me just in the last few days, one of the greatest examples of stewardship. And I share this with you mainly, probably more because I need to talk about it just from a processing perspective, but also just a beautiful experience that has happened in the last 48 hours. You may be noticing I'm wearing a little bracelet that says Life Share, Be an Organ Donor. 3 days ago, I got a phone call from one of the families in our high school that their aunt, 45 years old, had a massive heart attack. And that heart attack happened outside of the city of Tulsa, and getting the ambulance there quickly was not something that was able to happen. And so, sadly, in the process of trying to revive her, she went brain dead. And so the last few days I have been walking with this family kind of in their decision on what to do next. And this woman, 45D, had made it known that she wanted to be an organ donor. And as time would tell, she was a perfect match in every regard with her organs. And so the last few days have been walking with this family as they kind of had to make this decision to give this gift to those who could benefit from her organs. But to make the story even more profound, there's a woman on my staff at the school who was a recipient of a double lung transplant. And so I was sitting in a meeting on the last 2 days ago with her sitting at my left, and on my right I was dealing with phone calls and text messages with the family planning the last hours of Dee's life. And in that moment it just struck me. The gift and beauty of this woman's stewardship of what God had created within her is the gift of life for so many people. And so when we think about stewardship as a way of life, we can even be good stewards in death, even to the grave, recognizing that even our physical bodies, they're not ours. It is what God created. And he invites us to be generous, even unto death, with what he has given us. And so in your charity, I invite you to pray for the repose of the soul of Dee, but also for the Lissall family as they prepare to pay their final respects at her massive Christian burial on Tuesday. But that's very much on my mind as I come into this conference. What is that ultimate model of stewardship? in my mind, that gift of organ donation truly is a treasure that this person has given to other people. Okay, now that was sad. Let's move on. So a couple slides I want to show you and some quotes from the Joy of the Gospel that will kind of set up my conversation for today. In the Joy of the Gospel, paragraph 28, Pope Francis made the comment, "The parish is not an outdated institution precisely because it possesses great flexibility. It can assume quite different contours depending on the openness and missionary creativity of the pastor and the community." I'm not sure where each of you are in this room on your own stewardship journey. Some of you may have been doing stewardship for many years. Some of you are sitting here today thinking that this is the path in which you need to go down. And this slide reminds us of, again, the gift and beauty of parish life. The parish is not outdated because it possesses the ability to flex and to move and to reshape itself through the missionary creativity of the pastor and the community. In other words, as the Holy Spirit works in and through the gifts and talents of the pastor and the stewardship council and the other men and women who are faithful Christians in that community, the Holy Spirit has the power to work through you and them to recreate something that is beautiful. And so when you're thinking about striving to make your parishes that are rooted in the spirituality of stewardship, and it might seem like a daunting task, always remember that it is the Holy Spirit that is animating the work that you are about. The second quote comes from paragraph 85, which I think is another kind of thing for us to think about today. It says, "One of the more serious temptations which stifles boldness and zeal is a defeatism which turns us into querulous and disillusioned pessimists, or sourpusses. Nobody can go off to battle unless he is fully convinced of victory beforehand. If we start without confidence, we have already lost half of the battle and we bury our talents. The evil spirit of defeatism is brother to the temptation to separate before its time the wheat from the weeds. It is the fruit of an anxious and self-centered lack of trust." It's a powerful quote. When we think about implementing stewardship as a way of life in our parishes, or when we think about kind of recentering ourselves on the true and authentic understanding of what stewardship is and how it should be lived out, we can't fall into this temptation of self-centeredness or a lack of trust or this idea that it just can't be done. Because as the last slide reminded us, it is the Holy Spirit that animates the sacred work of our hands. It is the Holy Spirit that animates the dynamic reality of our parish communities. And oftentimes, we have to get out of the way. We have to get out of the way sometimes to let that Spirit truly work within our communities, to make them vibrant places of encounter where disciples are made and where stewardship is then experienced as a response of our people coming into a more authentic and deep and trusting relationship with Christ, who is our way, our truth, and our life. So this topic today is talking about 3 different parishes, 3 blessings, and 3 areas of opportunity. And so since 2007, since I was ordained, I've had the opportunity to serve in 3 parishes. All 3 parishes, as you'll see through these slides, had a lot of similarities. My first parish was the Church of St. Mary, a household of about 1,300 people, a school, and with students of 160, 4 masses a weekend, 2 daily masses, 2 hours of confession, 60 ministries listed in the ministry book, and roughly $24,000 a weekend of collections. They had been doing stewardship for many years, but it had gotten kind of old. It had gotten a little bit stale. Those who were doing stewardship were a very small group, and it was not a shared vision of stewardship as a way of life. My second parish was St. Pius X in Tulsa, 950 households, school with 320 students. Again, 4 masses, 1 daily mass, hour of adoration, 40 ministries listed on the book. And they really had not done much in regards to fostering stewardship as a way of life. The parish actually had gotten somewhat sleepy over the years. My last assignment that I left, St. Anne's, Broken Arrow, when I arrived, 650 households. We had a regional school with 340 students, 3 masses on the weekend, 1 daily mass, 3.5 hours of confession each week. 48 ministries listed in the ministry book, all of which had crickets attached to them. They were on the books, but nothing really was going on in them. And we had about $6,000 to $7,000 a weekend coming in for our collections. And so, although different in size and different in location, all three parishes, I would say, have similar blessings. Stable, dedicated parishioners who have strong parish identity. I think all of us can point in our parishes to those steady eddies. Those people that no matter what pastor comes along or what's going on in the parish, they stay. They kind of hunker down and they stay throughout the years because there's a strong sense of dedication and loyalty to the community and to each other. Although at varying degrees, a working understanding of stewardship. St. Mary's, again, had been doing it for many years. St. Pius was in its infancy. And St. Anne's had never really been introduced to the concept of stewardship, although these steady eddies who had been there for many years were truly exhibiting stewardship in so many ways and how they were dedicated to the life of the parish. All of them had a wide range of ministry opportunities and stable collections that was paying the bills and somewhat of a healthy contingency reserve. So you could say they were doing okay, not rocking and rolling, kind of not setting the pace, but very stable communities because of these indicators. So again, three parishes, three blessings, but also three areas of opportunity. So the opportunity that we saw pretty quickly coming in was the need to improve the hospitality and availability of prayerful liturgies. Increasing the number of dedicated parishioners who have a strong parish identity. Again, it was a very small group of people in all three of these parishes that were running the show. I'm sure that doesn't happen in your place. It's the same people doing the same thing over and over again. It's the same people giving the same amount of money to the collection basket year after year after year. That needed to be expanded. We needed to expand the sense of ownership, the sense of connectedness. Developing the spirituality of stewardship. In all three places, there was a jaded understanding of what stewardship was. I'll never forget the first weekend that we had our stewardship renewal at my last parish at St. Anne's. I get up and I start talking about stewardship, and at the end of Mass, one of our elders, who had been at the parish for 50-some years, comes walking over with this cane, and he says, "Father, I got to talk to you." And I said, "Okay, you want to make an appointment?" "No, I want to talk to you right now." I was like, "Okay, what do you have to say?" "This whole stewardship stuff, it's a bunch of crap." He said, "All you want is my money, so just say it." I was like, "Well, actually, I just want you to pray, and I want you to, be involved at whatever level you're able to be involved, and if you feel so called to give me your money, I'll take it. But it's not about your money." He said, "We'll wait and see, Father, we'll wait and see." Thanks be to God, 3 years later, he did circle back around and say, "You were right. It is more than being about the money." But developing the spirituality of stewardship is absolutely essential. Offering relevant and engaging ministry opportunities that form people as disciples, and financial transparency and stability. And I'm going to get into some more kind of deeper examples of what some of these look like and from my experience of implementing stewardship as a way of life. So here are some of the pitfalls that we have bumped into, or I have bumped into over the years as we've tried to implement stewardship as a way of life in the community. Striving to facilitate stewardship as a way of life without a larger vision. This is, I think, key to the success of a parish. It doesn't have to be a robust 3-year, 5-year strategic plan, but what is the direction? Where are you going? Because with that clarity, you're then able to make decisions against that plan. And if you say you're going to be a stewardship parish, that has to be at the forefront of everything you do. Everything you do. And so having a clear vision forward with stewardship at the heart of that strategic vision, that strategic path forward, is essential. Believing stewardship is about numbers, ministry, hours of service, collection versus an invitation to discipleship. In my first parish at St. Mary's, it was one of our larger communities in the Diocese of Tulsa, and I said there were 60-plus ministries on the book. And I was 6 months into my priesthood. I remember waking up one morning and lying in bed thinking, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to do this today. Because the parish was very active. It was a very energetic parish. There was a lot of things going on, but it was busy. It was very busy. A lot of these ministries had more to do with socializing with each other than actually forming ourselves in the faith and being in service to other people. So I felt myself being very busy, going to a lot of meetings, going to a lot of activities, going to a lot of these things, and feeling extremely spiritually empty. And so again, ministries are not about the numbers, it's about quality. It's about why does that ministry exist, kind of in the context of that larger vision of the parish that's striving to be a parish conducting the stewardship as a way of life. Pay attention to all 3 T's: time, talent, and treasure. Eric mentioned this in his first opening talk. That first T, which is prayer, that's why it's first. If you do anything in implementing stewardship as a way of life first, make sure that there are plenty of opportunities for your people to come into a deep and meaningful relationship with Jesus Christ. If you don't get the first T down and get it right and facilitate it and convince people to spend time in prayer and to make the commitment to Mass and the sacraments and confession and to reading the Bible and praying the Rosary and doing small faith groups, the other T's really won't ever come to fruition in the way that they should come to fruition. Pay attention to all 3 T's. One of my professors at St. Minor's School of Theology, before we were sent out, right before we were ordained, he got behind the podium in class and he comes up on his toes. Gentlemen, beware. The people of God have bullshit detectors. It comes with baptism. The people of God have bullshit detectors. Excuse my language. If you're doing stewardship because you want the numbers to go up in your ministries and in your collection, people will sniff it out. They will call you on it. And they won't participate. People are striving for authenticity. Be authentic in your implementation and facilitation of stewardship as a way of life in your parish. And we do that by paying attention to all 3 T's: time, talent, and treasure. I would say, pour yourself into that first T, and what will overflow from that first T is a people's desire to get involved. And what overflows from that second T is a desire for people to fund the mission because it makes sense to them, because they are in it, and they feel it, and they're convinced deep in their marrow. Pour yourself into the first T, it overflows into the second, and into the third. Not focusing on faith formation is a huge pitfall of stewardship. We have to be formed. Formed in the spirituality of stewardship, but formed as disciples of Jesus Christ, because stewardship is a disciple's response. And so it is actually, I think, a very exciting time to be living in regards to what is available to parishes as it relates to faith formation opportunities. Forum.org, the work that Focus is doing, the work the Augustine Institute is doing, the work that Lighthouse Media is doing, there's all kinds of amazing faith formation opportunities out there that are easily deployed in our parishes, that don't necessitate a large formation team in our parishes. The resources are extremely available, and not providing those timely resources is a pitfall in developing stewardship as a way of life. Having or allowing parish staff to do everything. The church has this tendency, right? Because people don't always show up when we put something in the bulletin. Or people don't automatically jump when we send out a parish email. And we get tired of communicating. And so what is the kind of the knee-jerk reaction? Well, I'll just do it myself. I once saw this little saying, the quickest way of getting something done is doing. Right? And that is a pitfall for stewardship. If we centralize the power in the parish staff and don't empower our parishioners to take a hands-on approach to the life and vitality of the community, the true stewardship will not happen, because really at the heart of stewardship is also this beautiful gift of collaboration. and shared leadership. Allowing parish staff and key volunteers to stay in roles of leadership when they are no longer effective. This is a hard one, because in the church we're oftentimes in the business of nice, right? We want to be nice to people. And instead sometimes we kind of get in our heads, inviting someone, to kind of re-envision their role, or inviting someone to consider a different ministry opportunity, or inviting a staff person to maybe consider that their time is up in a particular role of ministry in the church. That doesn't feel very nice. But the wrong people in the wrong places for too long is a pitfall to stewardship, especially if they're not open to facilitating what the church or the parish has identified as who we are about. It blocks it. And so in many ways, having those hard conversations with key volunteers and staff members to reset them is actually an act of charity, and it's actually an act of stewardship, because the parishioners are giving money and resources to pay for staff members to do the work that they've been called to do. And if the staff person or the key volunteer is no longer effective in that role, it's a misuse of financial resources. And I think what oftentimes we'll find is, as hard as those conversations are, and it hurts when you rip the Band-Aid, but it ends up being better for that person and better for the ministry. Pastors-driven versus stewardship council supported, or vice versa. It has to be both. It has to be all in. Allowing ministries to exist that are not open and welcoming to new members. This is a big one. My first stewardship renewal at St. Anne's, I did not realize how much of a problem we had with this until the ministry leaders got these big, robust lists of people that were interested in their ministries. And all I had heard in my first 6 months of being there, oh, Father, it's the same people doing everything over and over again. I'm so tired, I'm getting so worn out. And I hand them a list to say, my gosh, here's 8 new people. Well, Father, actually, I really don't need anybody else. Like, really? You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. So allowing ministries to exist that are not open to new people is a huge pitfall in stewardship development. Because you get them revved up, you get them excited, they make that commitment, they're vulnerable, they're stepping out, they're doing something they've never done before, and then they hit the wall. They're like, I'm not doing that again. And so, under this, allowing particular ownership of ministries is also a huge component of that, not seeking help outside the parish, and believing that stewardship is finished. All pitfalls to stewardship. What are some milestones? What are some of the fruits? Some of the things that you're going to see as stewardship kind of starts taking hold and is becoming a reality in your community. I love this passage from Proverbs 29:18, where it says, where there is no vision, a people perish, P-E-R-I-S-H. Right? You could flip it, and you could say, where there is a vision, a people, P-A-R-I-S-H. They perish. They gather. They come together. They rally. Where there's a vision, people will come together. One of the milestones is you arrive at this commitment level that is never done. You never fully arrive. And you're always recasting the vision. You're always reconsidering and kind of digging and being curious about ways in which you can implement and drill down stewardship as a way of life in every aspect of your parish. The laity and parish staff begin to understand the mission of the parish as making disciples. There's a great little story that we sometimes use in some of the retreats for stewardship retreats that has the image of the little lighthouse that used to sit on the edge of a coast. And in the early days when that lighthouse was built, the men and women who served there were heroic, and they would go out at sea and help those individuals that were drowning as their boats were being crashed against the rocks. But as time went on, more lighthouses were built, and fewer trips were made out to sea to rescue people. And the little lighthouses that were once rescue stations became country clubs and actually completely forgot about what their mission was. Sometimes in parish life, we can be so comfortable with just kind of the way things are. We can become comfortable with the way things exist. And we can kind of lose sight of what is our mission, what are we really all about. What we're about is making disciples of Jesus Christ, period. That's the only reason a parish exists, is to make disciples, help people fall madly and deeply in love with Jesus Christ. And so as we begin to always remember that and then facilitate ways in which people can respond to that, the laity and parish staff really kind of dig into that sense of mission, that sense of responsibility. The overall environment of the parish takes on an air of hospitality and welcome, not just at Mass, but in all aspects of parish life. If you've ever been to a stewardship parish that's really living it, you walk in the front door and you go, there's something different here. There's something different here. There's an energy here. It's palpable. And it's that spirituality of hospitality, that people being open to receiving each other, being able to see Christ in the brothers and sisters who are around them. Oftentimes when we talk about hospitality as it relates to stewardship, we can overly focus on the weekend experience or what hospitality looks like when people come to Mass. I would say that's of utmost importance, but sometimes we forget the question of what does hospitality look like in every single one of our ministries. Because if we're doing an annual stewardship renewal year after year, and there's this kind of fluidity of people coming in and out of ministries, if someone arrives at the Rosary Guild, and they're greeted, by a bunch of sourpusses or a coldness, they're not going to go back to that next meeting. And so how do you facilitate, again, from formation of all of our ministry leaders, kind of the gift and responsibility of providing hospitality as the doorway into engagement? All of us want to feel a sense of belonging. We're built for community. And that pillar of hospitality is a non-negotiable as it relates to striving to facilitate this as a way of life in our communities. And it has to be more than just at Mass. It has to pervade every aspect of parish life within our communities. Healthy parish ownership begins to become a reality. We started a ministry at St. Anne's called the Home Improvement Ministry. Mostly guys, a few ladies. Most of these guys are handymen. They like to work with their hands. They like power tools. They like ladders, And we have a lot of elderly parishioners at St. Anne's that have a hard time changing light bulbs, fixing things around their house, weeding their flower beds. And so we launched this home improvement ministry where those who are in need in our communities turn in work orders. And these men and women rally together once a quarter in a formal way, but on an ongoing basis as requests come in, to go out and take care of these individuals. Tom Huffnagel, who is the chair of our home improvement ministry, just has kind of caught the fire of service. This whole idea of healthy parish ownership there's no doubt in my mind that he feels this deep responsibility to care for the vulnerable adults in our community. And he's always coming like, what can I do next, Father? What's next? What service can I do next? I'm like, Tom, just relax. His missionary zeal is palpable, and he feels a sense of ownership that he can go out and start taking care of these individuals, and it doesn't have to always be directed by me. He can see what needs to be done. He can go out and initiate things. He can go out and take care of people, and it's not just a pastor-driven initiative, but the people of God in the community are able to see and recognize there's a need here, there's a need there. How are we going to respond to this? And they come to the table with ideas and enthusiasm versus waiting for Father to tell them what to do. It's a beautiful gift because, again, there's this understanding of I have gifts and talents to use and to give, and I have a desire to give them, and I'm going to find ways to do it. And that sense of parish ownership begins to build. Those seeking daily Mass, adoration, confession, and personal prayer time drastically increases. Eric mentioned this in his talk, but it's true. When we started our stewardship renewals at St. Anne's, we were obviously a much smaller parish with 630 families. But over the 3.5, 4 years that I was there, actually 4.5 years I was there, our daily Mass group went from about 7 to 8 people to 50 people coming to Mass on a given day. We had to move it out of our small chapel into our main church. And then during Lent, we see that number go up to closer to 100. I never preached about it. I never told them they should come to daily Mass. But as they begin thinking about what are some of the levers I can pull in my life to help my spiritual life, I have time to go to daily Mass. They made those commitments on their commitment cards. They fulfilled them. What else did we see? Our confession lines were always long. We offered confession about four hours a week, and it was a solid hour of hearing confessions, week after week after week after week. Why? Because as people were taking that time to consider, how am I going to grow in my spiritual life, they were making concrete commitments to the frequency of confession in their lives, and they carried through on them. Adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. We had 2 hours of adoration. Someone came to me and they said, Father, I feel called to bring this to your attention. We need to go to more adoration hours. I said, what are you thinking? She said, at least 12 hours a day. I was like, oh my gosh. We have 1 to 2 hours a week. You want 12 hours a day, 5 days a week? She said, yeah, we can do it. I said, okay. So what's your plan? She said, we're going to recruit during Lent. I said, okay. So I said, how are you going to do it? She said, I got a team. Okay. She put a team together. She had put a table in the back. She created a schedule. And we preached about it and pushed it all during Lent, that it was going to be our Lenten observance kind of lived throughout the year of being a parish that's centered in adoration of the Blessed Sacrament. On Easter Monday, we opened the door to 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and every spot's been filled since. That was not my idea. That came from the missionary impulse of the people, recognizing that prayer is the central pillar of stewardship as a way of life. They took ownership of it, and they made it happen, and it's still happening today. Just a beautiful gift. Adoration can because people desire to come into relationship with the Lord. And then personal prayer at time increases. This is a harder one to see. But it comes out on the stewardship renewal on an annual basis that every single year there's a drastic uptick in how people are self-identifying what they're doing in their personal prayer lives. And it's just been fun to watch, because the first year we did our stewardship renewal, people put stuff on the prayer pillar. But every single year, that prayer pillar gets fuller and fuller and fuller with people making those commitments. And then again, we're seeing the fruit of that with people's generosity and how they're giving their talent and their treasure back to the community. The parish officery grows as a result of personal discipleship. And I was very intentional putting that one at the very bottom. Some probably have a little bit of a differing view than I have on the T of treasure. I personally don't preach a whole bunch about it. I don't like talking about money from the pulpit. I'm not comfortable doing it. I do it from time to time, but I talk very little about money. I talk a lot about personal responsibility in our relationship with Jesus Christ. I talk a lot about encouraging people how to pray, or to pray, and then teaching them how to pray. I talk a lot about the opportunities in the parish where people can get involved and kind of dig in and be a part of the fabric of the community. And what we saw at St. Anne's, we had 630 households when I arrived. When I left 6 months ago, we were a little bit shy of 1,000 households. And also what we saw, the collection was that $6,000 to $7,000 a weekend. When we started doing the stewardship renewal, every year, the same people who had been giving previously, we saw an offertory increase of $200,000 a year among those who had already been tithing. That's the important kind of part of that. Those who are already tithing on an annual basis, we would see collectively that group, their increase would be $200,000 a year. And so today, St. Anne's is bringing in on a weekend between $16,000 and $18,000 a weekend. 4.5 years, obviously double parish size almost, but you can see the commitments to treasure drastically increase from year to year by those parishioners that are making those annual commitments. Those are some of the things that we see kind of come forth as stewardship takes hold. And so here are just some of the stats from the last year's stewardship renewal at St. Anne's that I think are noteworthy. At this point, there were 900 households that were a part of the stewardship renewal. 359 of those households made commitments. I think sometimes when we conduct surveys or different things in the parish, we're kind of sad by the lack of response. It's kind of underwhelming. But I think what you'll find is the first year will be pretty strong. The second year will be stronger. The third year will drop because they'll be saying that we're still doing this. And the fourth year it'll pick up and it'll stay strong kind of from that point forward because it's changing a culture. It's a way of life. It's never done. And by the third or fourth year, it really starts kind of taking hold in the fabric of the parish. And so this renewal is our fourth renewal. Actually, it should be 4 years of intentional stewardship. So after 4 years. So 900 households, 359 main commitments, 40% of registered households participated in the renewal. This is the number that I get really excited about. 1,833 prayer commitments by those 359 households. So mind you, one household fills out a commitment card. So there might be 4 or 5 people that are making commitments on one commitment card and designating who they are. But collectively, 1,833 prayer commitments. And we were able to move adoration Monday through Friday, as I've already mentioned. 1,595 ministry commitments. Of those in year 4, 591 of those were new commitments. So of the 1,595, 591 different commitments were into new ministries and things people had not done before. 61 inactive households made a commitment. This is something else I think that's profound. Eric was talking about the consistent kind of facilitation of stewardship as a way of life, and he talked about that in newsletter and communication. What happens when you're putting quality materials into the mailboxes of all of your households, direct mail, although it sometimes can feel antiquated today with electronics, you're putting something into those households on a monthly basis that's showing that this parish is alive. This parish is vibrant. This parish has something to offer. This parish wants you here. This parish is welcoming. You message it over and over and over and over and over again. And what we saw is 61 households that showed no activity in previous years, but were on our books, began to re-engage on some level in parish life. 285 offertory commitments. What was this number? $220,000 annual increase among those who had given in the past. And the weekly collection ended up being around $18,000 a weekend when I left. The parish continues to thrive. They're now over the 1,000 parishioner mark, and they are moving forward with great enthusiasm. But if you don't mind, I'll share with you my greatest joy of this parish and kind of what we were able to accomplish and achieve, again, by living stewardship as a way of life. When a parish is living stewardship as a way of life, it's attractive. There's a missionary impulse. There's a vibrancy. There's something that other people want. This was our RCA class last year. We brought 56 people into the church last year. It wasn't me. It was the people of God in the pews going out to their family members, going out to their friends, going into the school community to our non-Catholic families, and saying, come and see. Come and see. One of the things that we really tried to do as we kind of organized life and ministry at the parish was to be very mindful of those that we were serving, very mindful of the time that people are wrapped up in all kinds of activities in their life today, and asking the question, if we want people to come, when will they come? And then building our programs out around the times in which people will come. And what we found is Sunday mornings really became our sweet spot. Our mass schedule on Sunday mornings was 9 and 11:30. And so we moved RCIA off of Thursday nights, which is kind of the traditional way in which our diocese hosts RCIA, a 2-hour RCIA on Thursday nights from 7 to 9, and moved it to Sunday mornings from 10:15 till 11:15 with 2 weekend retreats to kind of round out the time commitment. They're coming to Mass anyways. We also offered adult faith formation during that time. We also offered family ministry opportunities during that time. We also offered pre-K through 12th grade youth ministry activities during that time frame. We jokingly said, one-stop shopping at St. Anne's. Come to Mass at 9, do something for your faith, and then go on with your day. Or come to faith, go to 11:30, go on with your day. And so we saw, again, it was a very opportune time for RCIA people. Something else we did, particularly for RCIA, we had street signs out in front of our church, huge street signs that said, ever thought about being Catholic? Come on in. We also had, during the season of Lent, we had what we called missionary disciples. They went door knocking in our neighborhoods and inviting people to Mass, inviting them to church, hanging flyers on their doors. We also did a major Facebook and social media campaign. We recorded a high-impact video with myself and then a younger couple and an older couple telling their story of coming into the faith. And it made a huge impact. When I started asking people in this particular class, how'd you find us? The number one part of it was, I was invited by a parishioner. And we talk a lot about that at St. Anne's. Go out and invite people. You are missionary disciples. It's not just my responsibility, it's yours. Secondly, surprisingly, the street sign had an impact on, I think, 3 people. And then social media had a huge impact as well. People seeing the invitation coming through the social media campaign. And so I can sit up here and talk about all kinds of fruits of stewardship, but this to me is the creme de la creme. Because it's a demonstration that when the zeal for the Lord takes hold of the minds and the hearts of our people and our parishes, and they're living with this strong recognition that all that I have and all that I am is a gift from God. And I have a responsibility to share that, even sharing my faith in Christ with other people. Amazing fruits come from it. And this is one of them. And I think it's one of the most telling fruits of a community that is strong and vibrant. And so in conclusion, stewardship is not a program. It's not a gimmick. And it's not a quick solution. Stewardship is a way of life, a way to build community, and a way to form disciples of Jesus Christ. If you go down the road of stewardship as a way of life in your community, and you set yourself on that path as that is your vision, you'll have no regrets. It's a lot of work. Sometimes think in parish life, we want vibrant communities, but we don't want to work too hard. As the parish becomes more vibrant, it's a lot more work. But when you share that work horizontally with the community, it becomes one of the most joyful rides of one's life, of being a part of that dynamic reality in the community. So with that said, I'll take any questions that you have. I think we've got a few minutes left. It is, about 15 minutes for questions. Yes? Yes, absolutely. So actually, if you were to go on Facebook and go to St. Anne Catholic Church Broken Arrow and like the page, the video libraries are all there. Something else that I started doing at St. Anne's, which I found to be highly effective, I would video a weekly homily message, 30 or actually 60 to 90 seconds, and would release it every week, and we would sponsor that on social media. And so again, it had a reach into our community. Tulsa, Oklahoma is predominantly evangelical Christians. Just right down the street from St. Anne's is Rhema Bible College, which produces some of the most anti-Catholic ministers in the U.S. And so we wanted to always kind of put out there a very strong kind of face for the church. And so those weekly videos, as well as the videos for RCIA, we found had a huge impact on bringing people into the community. And they're all there. The current pastor has continued to do those because we valued it enough that we hired a videographer for the parish that did the videos in a really well-done manner. You'll see them on the Facebook page. Yes?
As you were talking about the home improvement ministry,
Yeah.
what's going through my mind is, did insurance policies present challenges to some of your ministries?
We never had an issue with it. And so there actually are multiple parishes doing it in the Diocese of Tulsa. There are liability forms that the workers kind of sign to release the parish from liability, and I think the homeowner does sign something as well. It's just pretty simple, like kind of a release of liability if something goes wrong. And we always make, the homeowner has to be present and be there when they're working at the house. We follow all the virtues policies of adults and kids and those things, but we make it very clear, it's home improvement, not home restoration. You know, and so it's minimal types of things that get taken care of. From St. Mary's, the first parish, they have it, and the guys were a little bit overly enthusiastic on trimming some bushes of an elderly lady, and they got her wrath. So we take precautions. That answer your question? Yeah.
On the slides of PowerPoint's gonna be shared with us.
You are more than welcome to have the slides. Yes, I'm sure we can give those to whoever, and she can email those out to all of you. Yes. Something else that I meant to say that I did in the parish that was very helpful in the early years, particularly, every year, every ministry went through an evaluation. So I would send the ministry leader a set of questions, kind of assessing the vitality of the ministry and how they incorporated the new people from the stewardship renewal into their ministries. And so we created some accountability structures within the ministries that they were going to have to self-report out what's going on, what their succession plan is for leadership in that ministry. Are they thinking about the next leader? About 10 questions, and then members of the stewardship council would call and have conversations and debrief those questions with them. That ultimately led to, I think, 3 ministries at St. Anne's getting taken off the books because they wouldn't cooperate. We invited them, they wouldn't cooperate, we invited them again, and I said, next year, if you don't invite people in, we're not publishing your stuff in the ministry book. And we stopped publishing them, and they ended up dying out. But it was a block, and again, hard conversation sometimes, but we can't take that risk of someone taking a step into that ministry and then hitting a roadblock. So I can send you those questions as well. Yes?
If you walked in lines, what's the first thing you do? What's the most important first step to make to get yourself going?
I think to kind of assess among your parish staff and then your key councils of what their understanding of stewardship is, and then begin, kind of based on kind of your baseline of where they are, begin formation. And again, and as you begin formation, get to a point where they have a healthy understanding of what stewardship is, and then cast your vision. Like, where are you going? And then how does this affect kind of all aspects of parish life? I'm not getting paid to be a commercial or an info ad for Catholic stewardship consultants. But what I found in parish life is because there's so much stuff going on in the community that this sometimes can get lost, that having a partner like them that has a set kind of plan, that has a path forward that's proven to work, it's worth it. And some people will say, well, they're so expensive. You know, I can tell you, in the first year, we made that money back. If you want to look at it from a financial exchange, we made that money back through the offertory increase, and it never was a financial burden to the parish. And you can't pay one staff person to do everything that they do, from graphic design to writing to all the formation pieces and everything else like that. And so in my mind, it's always been a no-brainer for me, that's just a part of the parish budget. But if you're doing it on your own, I would do that assessment, I would cash that vision, and then I would start kind of building it out, kind of with those components that Eric mentioned. Yes?
Can you talk real quick about the pillar of good coffee?
Oh, yes. Coffee. I like coffee. Who likes coffee? Yeah, you like coffee? We're living in a coffee age, right? All the little niche coffee shops are around. But at church, we have these big cauldrons where we dump Folgers into them. That's been ground up probably 5 years ago, and it's been sitting in a hot warehouse. And we have these perk pots that we burn the coffee with the Folgers. And we put it out for coffee and donuts, and we're like, come have coffee and donuts. They're like, no way I'm not having your coffee. It tastes like sewer water. When we began reaching out to the young families and trying to get the young families to stay for things, what we discovered, where are they going when they drop their kids off? They're going to Starbucks. Or they're going somewhere to get a cup of coffee. So there's a little local roaster in Tulsa called Double Shot Coffee, and I'm good friends with the owner, and I called him and I said, I want you to make me a deal on coffee. And so we bought a whole new coffee system. pump pots, a grinder, and freshly roasted coffee every week. We grind it and put it out. It sounds funny, but like people started staying for coffee and donuts. Really, they did. And the lady who was in charge of coffee and donuts for, since Abraham's time, she's like, well, I'm not going to make coffee that way. I'm like, oh, come on, Roxy, yes you are. I've been doing it this way for so long. It's not going to make a difference. It's too expensive. We're going to do it this way, Roxy. And so finally she agreed. It was easier for her to do it. Then one day she came up and she said, this coffee is pretty good, Father. Yes. Won her over. Even the older people appreciated the good coffee. It's an investment, but again, in my mind, it's an act of hospitality. If you're going to open the door and invite people to a banquet, to something nice, make it nice. The church can't be plastic. We can't serve the minimal, As a kid, I remember watered down Kool-Aid and stale vanilla wafers is what was served to us as kids in faith formation. And that is always stuck in the back of my head. I'm like, that's not going to be me as a pastor. Hospitality is, give your best. You people are investing in the parish, give them the best back. What else? Yes?
About what percentage of those who are active in the ministries are young adults versus us older adults?
That's a great question as well. So how many in those who are involved in ministries are younger versus older? It's been a slow change, to be honest with you. For the first couple of years at St. Anne's in particular, that's the pressures on my mind, it was the older people. But as the stewardship renewal started bringing new blood in, it was a natural progression that happened. And I would say, I'm sometimes blown away, the amount of change that happened in that parish in a very short amount of time, the majority of the people that had been there for many years embraced it. Because, again, they themselves were understanding kind of this mindset of, this is not mine, and I have to share it, and if I want to see this continue, kind of past my time, I have to pass it on to somebody else. And so I would say today, it's 50-50, that the change that has happened. But those pillars are still very involved. But they're involved right alongside of the young people. Something that we try to do at St. Anne's is to not always isolate the community, older, younger, families, single. We try to do a lot of things where there's kind of cross-pollination because, again, we're better when we're together. Versus, obviously some things necessitate a more isolated approach, but we try to do a lot of larger kind of group things as well. Yes?
So, how did you ask people to transition off? Did you do it yourself, or did somebody else help you with it?
You're fired. No.
Just like that.
That's just like that. I'm mean. That's just it. Lots of conversation. So it really started with that it would start with that evaluation each year, and if it begins to be noticed that there is a closed nature, I would just have a direct conversation with them, more along the lines of, tell me about your ministry. What's going on in your ministry? How are you able to receive people? And in those few that ended up being taken off, there was just a true resistance. There was not an openness at all to it. And the other ones, it was painful for a couple of them, but they understood. But it was around helping kind of raise their mind to an understanding that we have to do what is best for the ministry, we have to do what is best for the parish, we have to do what is best for making disciples, we have to do what is best kind of for the whole. And so although you love this ministry and this is kind of your heart is all in it, it really isn't about you, and it's said in the nicest way, but we have to be thinking that if I can facilitate something great for the larger community, wouldn't you want to be a part of that? And more often than not, they'll say, you're right, I don't have the energy anymore, or I've lost the enthusiasm for it. And then you guarantee them that the good work that they've done will continue on with the leadership of somebody else. Most of the time, we've been able to keep them involved in that ministry on some level, or get them involved somewhere else, and they've not left the parish mad at me. Most of the time. And because the school is a ministry of the parish, you're receiving a benefit from that. And so in our diocese, there's a pretty heavy subsidy that goes we were a regional school, so it was $550 per kid that went to the school to help subsidize the school. So you're getting a benefit of the education, but you're also getting a benefit of the tuition dollars. And because we are not just takers, we have to be all in. There were certain requirements for those families who were receiving that benefit that they had to meet on an annual basis. They had to have a stewardship card on file. They had to be fulfilling those commitments the best that they could, and they had to be contributing on some level to the financial viability of the parish. And again, I put more emphasis on the first two. And on a yearly basis, I would do kind of an audit of those families, and if a family was not meeting those requirements, they would get a phone call from someone on my staff. If that did not motivate them, then they would get another letter to say, you no longer receive the subsidy for this next year, and you're at this new tuition rate. And we found that it did help on some level, kind of sometimes that extrinsic motivation to get them back in the saddle again can turn into an intrinsic motivation of actually wanting to be a part of the community versus it being forced based on finances. But again, it goes back to, are the expectations clear? Are you using language that articulates the role of the parish in a larger mission, the role of the school in a larger mission of the school, and do you hold to it year after year after year? And I think what you'll find is they'll start getting it, but also I think you have to be careful in everything you do to really push those school parents back into parish life in a variety of ways. Yeah. Yes?
Can I ask both you in here, maybe to respond, but did you ever encounter or experience a large diversity of cultures in your parishioners in your parish? And if so, did that present obstacles or changes in your strategy to bring stewardship about?
So kind of stewardship in like multicultural dynamics, what's that look like? It's really good.
Significant.
That's a good question. So St. Anne's, we have a very large Filipino community. But again, I would say a Filipino community that have been pretty Americanized as well. So they were very present. I would say from that cultural perspective, they are as a culture a very generous people, and they actually jumped right in quickly, to the message. I don't have a lot of experience of facilitating this kind of within a more Hispanic or Latino community. That's not been a part of my own journey. Eric probably could speak more of that dynamic. You're on the spot.
In terms of developing, because the question I think was, in a multicultural parish, what do you see and what do we see in terms of dynamics, and how do you change anything in terms of how you're developing stewardship as a way of life? And I mean, we've been in parishes where we're doing things in even 5 different languages. And the thing is that depending on what culture people are coming from, they may see things or be coming from a different mindset, but the thing that ends up making it the same across the board goes back to what Father Kastl's been hitting on multiple times about missionary discipleship. That no matter who we're talking about from what culture, God's calling all of us to take a step, and we all have a responsibility to take steps trying to grow our relationship with Him. So it's really just about being more intentional about being Catholic and living your faith, which ends up being applicable no matter where the culture is, where people are coming from. Now with that said, you need to be intentional with how you then message and communicate to the different cultures based on where they are coming from. And that's a lot longer discussion than a quick answer right there. But what we've seen consistently is that if it's done well, whether it is, no matter what the culture is, that we've seen the same results year in and year out with multicultural parishes, or parishes that are mainly Hispanic or mainly Filipino. It's just got to be done well, and they cannot be talked down to. And one of the things that we've seen is that in many parishes where we go into that are having significant inroads in terms of Hispanic parishioners especially, is you have the Anglo parish and the Hispanic parish. And these two different groups. And what developing stewardship as a way of life can do is it can help bring them together. And that's one of the things, even touching base and following up on what you said about the school. The same type of thing with the school. I'm not sure who brought that up, but the same thing where we see in dynamics where a parish has a school. And it's the parish, and especially older parishioners, and then the school households that do their stuff with the school. And you've got to bridge those gaps. And what we see, as he's experienced multiple times, is that in all of those scenarios, stewardship is a bridge that can bring the parish closer together.